I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Friday live question and answer class. We hold these every Friday at noon, West Coast time in Seattle, and I take your questions. Each week I'll talk about a different topic in American accent training and help you with a quick tip you can use right away to improve your American accent. Today, we're going to be talking about how Americans really talk in fluent speech, what we do when we're connecting words and reducing sound, of the tips and tricks that you can use to sound more fluent when you're speaking in American English, sound more like an American, and also to understand what's happening when Americans are speaking. So there may be some elements of listening that can help you with your accent as well. I'll be taking your questions. Please feel free to ask them at any time in the chat messages, and I'll pause periodically and take your questions. You don't have to ask me about today's topic. You can ask about pronunciation or anything related to the American accent. So, talking about real talk, I want to demonstrate for you that when I'm speaking, I don't actually break in between words. So when we're writing, there's a clear break where one word ends and the next word begins. But often in speaking, we actually connect and link between words. If I stop after every word, it sounds very choppy. You can hear how that's noticeably different from my regular fluent speech. And what happens for a lot of people when they begin to work on pronunciation and begin to work on their accent, we highlight and are careful to be saying the words correctly. This is a good thing. It does make you more clear. You may have to slow down to put the end sounds on words and to be very clear. But the bad part is that sometimes when you begin doing that, you can sound a little less fluent, a little more choppy. Depending on what your native language is, you are already going to be naturally doing some linking when you're speaking English, but understanding how it works and using it to help you can really help you sound more smooth and more fluent in English. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. We're going to talk basically today about three main elements for fluency when speaking English. One is linking, how one word goes into the next word. Another is reduced sounds, so how we shorten, reduce, and leave sounds out in connected speech to be more fluent. And the third is we'll talk about contractions, so places where two words become one word and how we use those in English. So let's talk about linking first of all. What linking means is that some words connect to each other when we're speaking. So I don't typically say was I say was I. It's almost like it's one word. I don't usually break between is and it. I say is it, not is it. And again, like I said, you naturally do this. You don't have to think ahead or plan ahead too much for linking, but there's some places where linking will change the sounds in the speech. So we're going to look at those. I'm going to pause for a question. Pascal wants to know, do Americans speak in the face? Is it kind of a nasal language? So I think you're referring to kind of the tone or where the resonance happens in American English. And yes, there are some nasal qualities to English, but I would say the main thing in terms of resonance for most American English speakers is that has to do with kind of the tongue's resting position. And so we tend to have a very central position for our speech, where the tongue rests right in the middle of the mouth, not high, not low, not forward, not back. The sound that we make there is the vowel schwa, the sound, and that's kind of the place from where we start for all of our resonance. In terms of like head, nose, chest resonance, that varies from speaker to speaker. That's more about personal physiology. And so I would say that no, we're not particularly nasal in American English compared to some other languages. Good question. Okay, so most of the time when I'm linking words, it's fairly straightforward. But as I said, sometimes the sounds change slightly when words get linked. So one example of this would be when a word ends with a T and the next word starts with a Y sound or letter Y. Good, Pascal. I'm glad that answer helped you. So for an example, when I say the words got you, you can hear how if I'm saying them separately, I make a very clear T sound there and a very clear Y sound. Got you. But when I say it together, I actually say something more like got you, got you. So when they link, that T and the Y, or the Y sound, end up sounding kind of like a this sound, ch. So got you sounds a little bit like got you, got you. And then you might have noticed people often say gotcha, gotcha. That actually comes from got you. And what happened is that T and Y linked, and it ended up being more of a ch sound. And then the vowel in you gets reduced to a schwa. We're going to talk about reductions later, but got you turns to gotcha. So you might say something like, I got you a coffee. People say gotcha to mean I got it, I got you, I understood you. Or I got you some cookies, I got you some lunch. That's really, in that sentence, they really are saying got you. It just is the way that they reduce and link. It ends up sounding more like gotcha. I wouldn't use gotcha professionally, like if you're in a meeting and your boss says, here's the information, I wouldn't say gotcha unless it's a casual conversation with your boss. Professionally, you're going to work more on got you, got you. That CH sound happens in professional fluent speech or in casual speech, but gotcha is more casual. So that's one example of how when I'm connecting the words, the sounds change slightly. Another one that is very useful in sounding more American and linking your words is what happens with the T sound at the ends of words. And I have several videos for you about linking final T. I'm going to give you the links for that in a few moments. Generally in class, I like to give you some links that you can look at after class, both on my YouTube channel, Speech Modification Seattle, and also on my website, speechmodification.com, where you can go in more into depth on some of the topics we're talking about, learn some more information, try some lessons, and hear more examples. Abraham says, I have so much difficulty when a word ends in a consonant and the next starts with a consonant. Yes, this is definitely the most challenging combination of words. Now, there are some places where we link those as well. For example, if I end a word with one sound and the next word starts with the same sound, like I've got to go, I don't say that T sound twice. I don't say I've got to. That's more challenging, more difficult to articulate those two. I would tend to say I've got to go. I've got to go. So there's just one T sound in there. Similarly, if the sounds are very similar in placement, like if I'm saying I got that, if I go from the T to the TH, I stop my T and go right into the TH. So got that. I end up kind of not really saying that T. I move up into the T position, got that, and then my tongue is already getting ready for that TH. So when you're going from consonant to consonant, that kind of linking, sometimes we can't link and we have to have a break between words. Some consonants are not very close to each other. Other times we can get ready for the next consonant while we're saying the last consonant. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but Abraham, I would suggest look on my channel page, Speech Modification Seattle. You can use the search box, and I would put in that search, I would do consonant to consonant linking. I'll look at, I have some information on Speech Modification Seattle that would be helpful for you there as well. And sometimes just taking those two words that you're having trouble saying in order and only saying the two words instead of the whole sentence can help you. So saying got that, got to, practicing the combination so that your tongue gets used to moving from one position to the next can be helpful. But you have a very good point that that's one of the more difficult combinations to be fluent on. So when I'm talking about final T is one of the sounds that changes the most when it's linked and connected. And the manner in which it does that is that I don't say my T. For example, I don't say what about. When I link those two, my T changes and it actually ends up sounding more like a D. So what, rather than what about, it ends up sounding like what about. What, duh. I'm putting the vowels in for you as well. What about? What about? And so the final T linked, it turns to what's called a flap T. We've talked about this in class before, but the easiest way to think of it is just think of it as a D sound. So rather than what about, try what. Rather than hot out, hot out. Hot out. Rather than it is, it is. It is. You can find more help for final T and what happens with the linking there on my video about linking, and also my videos about final T and medial T. Here's the linking video. That's a really good start for just understanding what linking is and how it works. I'm going to put that in the chat. You're welcome, Abraham. I just saw your comment. That's a good starting point for understanding linking in general. You can also go to my linking and reduced sounds playlist or go to speechmodification.com. And when you're on the website, a good starting point for any topic is to go to the free practice. So if you look at free practice and you click on online practice free trial, then a search box will come up on the side and you can put in any topic that you want. So for this topic, go to that page on Speech Modification Seattle, click in linking, and all of the things related to linking will come up for you, and you can find more details and more lessons for that. So very good. So we've talked about, I told you there were 3 things I wanted to talk about today for fluent speech. The first was linking. The second that I'd like to talk about is what's happening with reduced sounds. So when I'm speaking in connected speech, sometimes certain words and certain vowel sounds are less important and they get reduced. Generally, the intonation patterns for American English are that the important words are longer and stretched out, and the structure words are said more quickly and can be reduced. So some examples would be the word to. When I'm talking about, so we've talked about this before as well, the word to, pronounced the same as to and to. So this is to talk, to listen. This is I'd like to go to, meaning also, and this is obviously the number 2. This version of to, most of the time in connected speech, is not pronounced with vowel oo, to. It's actually reduced to vowel schwa, and it sounds like ta. So some examples, if I'm saying I need to talk to you, you can hear how that doesn't sound very fluent. I don't say I need to say I need to talk. I need to talk to you. So my oo's turn to vowel schwas, they turn to . So a way to practice this is looking at just verbs. You can say to talk, to think, to like, etc. And then also in prepositional phrases, like I'm going to the blank. I won't say that vowel oo, I'll use more of a schwa vowel. So it sounds like to the store, to the library, to the meeting, to the office. Using that reduction, that rather than an oo, a sound is one way to be more fluent and reduce and speed up on the parts of the sentence that are less important. We don't reduce the other kinds of to. If I'm going to, I'm going also, I'm going to stay with that pure vowel. Or if I have 2 friends, 2 emails, I'm going to use that pure vowel oo. So to is an example, turning to ta of a reduction. There are many others, and you can find help for reductions on my website as well. We'll probably talk about this topic again in the next few weeks in class, and we'll give you more examples, but there's a lot to cover today. So I just want to briefly highlight two as an example of what happens in connective speech, which is reduced sounds. Lastly, the third thing I'd like to cover today are contractions. So a contraction is when two words get reduced to one word. So for example, some of the ones that we use with I am becomes I'm, I have becomes I've, and I will becomes I'll. And these are just some examples. I'm going to talk about more. But what I want to let you know is that contractions are grammatically correct. They're used formally and informally. And an American will almost always use a contraction rather than two words. It's very, very rare for an American to say something like, I am going. They'll always say, I'm going, or I will do that. They'll say, I'll do that. They won't say, I have been studying. They'll say, I've been studying. And it's correct and okay to use the multiple verbs, to use I have, I am, I will, but you will sound less fluent and less American if you do. That's just another element of accent that's identifiable if you don't use the contraction. And so it's a good idea to begin to notice contractions when you're listening to American English and attempt to use some of them, simply because it reduces the number of words that you have to say and it makes you more fluent. You might have noticed when I was saying I have been going, or I am going to, that there's a lot of verbs in a row. And so the less important verb, the am, the have, the will, the helping verb is the one that gets contracted. So that's a little bit of help for that. If you go to my channel page or my website, either place, you can use the search box and type in contractions, and you'll see some resources for that. So let me see. Yes, I don't have that link handy, so I won't be giving that to you right here in the chat, but that can be very helpful. So when you're talking, it's hard to remember to use these all of the time. So I suggest just choosing one or two to try to implement, get used to how they sound, and use those contractions in your speech. All of the elements of fluent speech, I have a playlist that's called Real Talk, also an online course that's called Real Talk. And in those playlists, videos, and in that course, what I do is I show you, for many frequently used words and phrases, how Americans make those linkings, how they link words, how they reduce sounds, and how they use contractions, so that you can compare the written words to what you actually hear. Beginning to hear and notice these differences in American speech, hearing these reduced sounds and linked sounds can be very helpful in increasing your fluency and your ability to use them. So I'll give you the link for my Real Talk playlist. It's a great starting point to teach you some of these skills. I also suggest go to my website, speechmodification.com, and go to my online courses page. There you can find the Real Talk course, and you can get a free trial of that course. It's a great way to see, okay, is this online learning useful for me? Is that something that's helpful? If this is the level that you're at and you really want to be working on those small details to sound more American, another good approach is to work with me one-on-one. I offer Skype classes as well as group classes here in the Seattle area. And we can look at some of the more advanced skills, what's different in how you're speaking versus how Americans are speaking. And of course, I offer much more basic and fundamental pronunciation and intonation lessons and classes, so check those out as well. Okay, Abraham has another question, or request. He says, helpful is a difficult word. So is that a difficult word for you to pronounce? Or is it a difficult word that you just don't like it? I'm assuming pronunciation. I'm going to start with that. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. So I think with helpful, probably what's happening for you there, and happens for many people, is that there's quite a few consonants in a row in that word. So I'm going to write it out, helpful. And you were mentioning that it's hard to go from consonant to consonant. And so then you're seeing we have 3 in a row here in the middle. So here's my suggestion. We definitely do not link between the p and the f. Helpful. Well, actually, maybe we do a little bit. So what I do when I say this word, help, I'm going to ask you to build it from the back. So just start with the word full. If that's difficult for you, try just the O sound. Basically, that's a schwa, that sound I was talking about, and an L sound. So I'm going to say O, where I keep my tongue kind of in the middle, and then I lift the tongue behind the teeth. O. Then I can add my F. Full. Then let's see if I can add my P. Full. That's probably where the difficulty lies for you. The P is with the lips, and so is the F, but the F is the teeth and the lips. So basically, I have to close my lips and then open and let the air come out with my F sound. But when I'm saying helpful, what I tend to really do is I stop this P. So I'm not saying helpful. You can't hear that P in that puff of air. I'm saying helpful. So I'm going to the L sound and closing my lips. Help. And then I'm releasing into the F. Helpful. I'm giving you kind of technical details here on how that's happening. You can also say helpful and have a little break in there. You'll be well understood. It just doesn't sound as fluent, and you're probably noticing that Americans don't do that. I hope that was helpful for you. I think that would be a good video for me to make to break down those details again and help people with that word, since, as you noticed, it is a difficult word to say. Thank you for your comment. Okay, another question from Catherine. Garden and useful. Okay, so the word garden basically has the vowel with the vowel r. So that might be challenging for you. Garden. And useful is interesting because in the word use, we use a Z sound, but in useful, we use an S sound. So again, there's another transition from an S to an F, useful, where I have to be in the S position with my tongue behind my teeth, and the air continues. And then I have to move to the F position with my tongue on my lip. So going is something that you need to be able to transition for in that word, useful. And then again, full, we talked about how we're moving from that schwa vowel to the L sound. Useful. Let me know if I didn't hit the points that are difficult for you on those 2 words. I can come back to them and break them down further. You're very welcome, Abraham. I'm glad that was useful and helpful for you. Good. So I've shared all good resources. I'm going to give you one more link in our chat box, and this is for a class that I did about linking American T. I think it's a good starting point because it's one of the sounds that really sounds the most American, and it's one of the types of linking that makes the biggest change. Most of the other types of linking, I'm just gliding from one sound to the other. And you'll notice that places that it happens naturally, you're probably already doing it. Places that it's more challenging, we aren't always linking. Another suggestion for you, if you're just getting started and you want to get moving and really build some skills with your American accent, is my new online course, which is a 6-week course. And it starts you at the very beginning with some of the most important pronunciation and intonation practices. And each week you get new video lessons and new materials for practice that help you move through the steps of SMART training and build those skills. So I'm going to give you the link for that. There is a free trial for that course as well, so you can give it a try and see if it's something that you find helpful and useful. Those are words for today. And see if online learning, it works well for you. If you're here in the Seattle area, I hope that you'll join me this coming week. On Wednesday night, I have a workshop in Bellevue, 7 o'clock. We're going to be talking about some of the most common error patterns that happen in American English. And I'll be doing some Wednesday night series. You can find those and all of my free and paid workshops on my calendar page on my website. I'll give you that as well. I have another workshop coming up in the daytime on Monday, the 22nd. That will be in Redmond at the Redmond Library. And I hope you can make it to that. And then I'm starting a new fall class that will begin on Saturdays on October 27th. And that's a 6-week class. So that's a group class for all levels, really good for beginners and for those who want to kind of take their American accent to the next level. So you can find that on the class page as well. If you're not here in the Seattle area, I'll be continuing to have these free classes on Fridays, so you can join us next week for a new topic. And also check out my online classes, or give me a call or send me an email if you'd like to have a consultation about one-to-one training. So let's get to our quick tip for today. When you're looking at some of these more advanced elements of accent and you're thinking about trying to increase your fluency, it can be overwhelming to try to think about all of these things at once. So what I suggest is to choose one small element that we've talked about today, one small thing, and try it out, try to implement it. If you try to think about all of it all the time, it's not going to happen for you. It's too much to be thinking and speaking at the same time. But if you make one very small change and you practice with it, you may be able to implement that into your speech, and then you can build from there. So one example would be, instead of trying to use I am, change to I'm. And you can use repeated phrase practice to help you with this. So you can say I'm and then add some verbs. For example, I'm talking, I'm learning, I'm working, I'm studying. That gives you a lot of practice for saying I'm rather than I am, builds a new motor habit. Also, it challenges you because you have to think of what to say. So it's more like what you have to do in real speech. And you can start to implement that contraction I'm instead of I am, which is going to make you sound more fluent. Another example for linking, using that T sound, you might want to try to start saying got it instead of got it. Remember, we said the T turns to more of a D, so it sounds like got it, got it. And that's something that, if it's something that you say naturally, then that would be a good one. Another final T linking that might be helpful to practice on is put it, trying put it instead of put it. And you can use repeated phrase practice for this as well. So you could say, put it on my desk, put it in the drawer, put it in the file, put it over there, and think of additional things that you can put in the blank after put it. That's my quick tip for today. Keep it small, do some practice, see how it works for you, and then build from there. Don't try to do too much at once because it'll be challenging and it you won't be able to get it into your speech. Any other questions today about this topic or anything else related to pronunciation, American accent? Please feel free to ask me those now. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I suggest that you do that and click on the notifications bell. You can turn on alerts and you'll be notified when I upload new videos or when I go live. And I hope that you can join me next week for the same class, same time on Friday. Find more resources and help on speechmodification.com in my online courses and my free practice. Thanks so much for being a part of class today and for your great questions. I look forward to seeing you next week. So Catherine had one more question. Sorry, I didn't see that, Catherine. Garden. So garden, I thought den was the sound like Manhattan, Manhattan. So when I say garden, I do use a little bit of a syllabic N there, garden, where I go right from that D to the N. So I'm not saying garden. It's not like the word den. So when I say garden, this D-E-N sounds like garden. So I kind of stop that D, garden. I guess I say both. I might say garden with a D, or I might say garden. You're right. Manhattan, button. What those tend to do is eliminate the vowel and stop the stopped consonant. And then a syllabic N. I have a video and a website lesson about syllabic N. So if you go to the search box and type that in, you'll see more examples of words like mountain, garden, button, mitten, etc., where we use and deploy that syllabic N. So excellent question. Sorry, I didn't see it. It got lost in my chat. Any other questions? If you do have a question and I didn't get to it today, you're so welcome, Catherine. Please feel free to leave that question in the comments for this video or any other video. If you're watching this after the live broadcast is finished and you have a question, put it in the comments. I do always check those comments and I will get back to you with a link for where you can find the information. If I don't already have a video helping you with that, I love your comments and suggestions because it tells me what videos to make and what topics to cover in my classes. This is really about what is useful for you and what will help you. So thank you for your questions and comments. I'm Christine Dunbar, signing off for today. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. Speechmodification.com. Bye, guys. See you next week.